Part 1. The balcony at Bella Vista. Hercule Poirot disliked disorder. It offended not only his sense of tidiness, but also his faith in logic, symmetry, and the proper arrangement of the human mind. Therefore, as the train slowed into the small coastal station of San Remo-sur-Mer, Poirot felt a mild irritation, an irritation caused by the chaotic bustle of porters, tourists, and sunburnt English travelers arguing loudly over luggage. Yet the sea was beautiful. That, Poirot admitted generously. The Hotel Bella Vista rose above the coastline like a pale marble jewel. Its balconies stacked one above the other, each promising privacy, romance. And Poirot observed opportunity. Opportunity, after all, was where crime flourished. Poirot had not come to investigate anything. At least not officially. His doctor had insisted upon rest. His friend Captain Hastings, currently in England, had insisted upon sunshine. And Poirot himself had insisted upon a hotel with excellent service. Bella Vista met all requirements. From the moment Poirot entered the lobby, he sensed it, the subtle hum beneath polite conversation, the strain behind forced smiles. People here were not merely relaxing. They were watching one another. Ah, Poirot murmured softly. Interesting. A gathering of strangers. The hotel manager, Monsieur Laurent, personally greeted Poirot with excessive politeness. Poirot noted the man's nervous hands. "Your suite, Monsieur Poirot, overlooks the sea," Laurent said. "Very peaceful." Poirot smiled thinly. Peaceful places, he knew, often hid violent thoughts. The Bella Vista was nearly full. At dinner that evening, Poirot observed his fellow guests with professional detachment. There was Sir Raymond Calthorpe, a tall Englishman in his late 50s, impeccably dressed, his manner confident to the point of arrogance. Wealth clung to him like a tailored suit. His wife, Lady Eleanor Calthorpe, sat beside him, elegant, reserved, and noticeably tense. Across from them sat Julian Calthorpe, Sir Raymond's stepson, a handsome young man with restless eyes and an impatience that betrayed itself in small gestures. Nearby was Isabelle Moreau, Sir Raymond's private secretary, efficient, quiet, and observant. Poirot noticed that she spoke little but missed nothing. At another table laughed Victor Langley, Sir Raymond's business partner, loudly recounting stories of success and risk, while sipping brandy with careless confidence. And finally, on the adjacent balcony, quite literally, was Sophia Bellini, an opera singer of considerable fame, her presence commanding attention even in silence. She occupied the room next to Sir Raymond's suite, her balcony separated from his by a low marble divider. Poirot's little gray cells stirred. So many connections, so many tensions, and balconies. An uneasy evening dinner passed with polite conversation. Yet Poirot detected undercurrents of hostility. Sir Raymond spoke sharply to his wife. Julian barely concealed his resentment. Isabelle Moreau excused herself early. Victor Langley drank too much. At precisely 10:30 p.m., Sir Raymond announced he would retire early. "I have correspondence to review," he said curtly. "Business never sleeps." Lady Eleanor hesitated. "I will join you shortly," she said. Sir Raymond did not reply. Poirot watched him leave the dining room, noting the stiffness of his gait, the faint irritation in his expression. At 11:45 p.m., Poirot himself returned to his suite. He stood for a moment on his balcony, gazing at the moonlit sea. Then a scream shattered the stillness. It was sharp, sudden, and unmistakably human. Poirot was already moving. Death on the balcony. Guests poured into the corridor. Doors opened. Voices overlapped in panic. A maid screamed again, pointing toward the end of the hall. Sir Raymond Calthorpe lay sprawled on the tiled floor of his private balcony, visible through the open French doors. His body was awkwardly positioned, one arm twisted beneath him, his face pale and unmoving. Lady Eleanor collapsed into a chair, sobbing. He locked himself in," she cried. "He said he wished to be alone." The hotel doctor arrived quickly. A brief examination was enough. Dead, he announced. Heart failure, perhaps. The police were summoned. The balcony door was indeed locked from the inside. No sign of struggle. No weapon. The inspector nodded gravely. A tragic suicide, he declared. Poirot said nothing. He stepped quietly onto the balcony, his eyes scanning every detail, the position of the body, the railing, the faint scuff marks on the tiles. The night air still heavy with perfume and salt. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Poirot bent slightly, his gaze fixing upon a small, almost invisible detail near the edge of the balcony. His mustache twitched. Suicide? He murmured softly. Non. He straightened and turned toward the inspector. Permit me, monsieur, Poirot said gently. But I must disagree. The inspector frowned. You are? Hercule Poirot. A pause. The Hercule Poirot? Poirot inclined his head. This, he said calmly, is not a death by one's own hand. This is murder. The sea below continued its gentle rhythm, indifferent to human tragedy, and somewhere within the elegant walls of Hotel Bella Vista, a murderer listened and waited. Part 2. A perfect suicide morning arrived gently at the Hotel Bella Vista, as though the sun itself were reluctant to disturb the elegance of the place. Golden light spilled across the balconies, touching marble railings and pale curtains, softening the memory of the night before. But death does not soften with daylight. Hercule Poirot stood near a window in the lounge, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the sea. Behind him, the hotel buzzed with low, anxious conversation. Guests spoke in whispers, as if raising their voices might summon the dead man back to his balcony. Inspector Jacques Fournier, of the local police, arrived promptly at 8:30. He was a neat, practical man, with little patience for complications and great faith in obvious explanations. A sad affair, Fournier said, glancing at his notes. Sir Raymond Calthorpe, English, wealthy, known heart condition. Locked door. No weapon. Suicide or natural causes accelerated by distress. Poirot turned slowly. Monsieur l'inspecteur, he said politely, permit me to ask, do you believe that a man who chooses to die arranges his body so untidily? Fournier frowned. Death is rarely tidy. Ah, said Poirot. But murder often is disguised as chaos. The official story, the inspector outlined the accepted version of events. Sir Raymond had retired early, locked himself onto his balcony, and overcome by despair or physical weakness, had collapsed. No one heard a struggle. No one saw another person enter or leave his suite. A perfect suicide, Fournier concluded. Poirot listened patiently, then asked softly, and his state of mind? Fournier shrugged. Business pressures. His partner mentioned financial strain. At the mention of Victor Langley, Poirot's eyes flickered. And Madame Calthorpe? Poirot asked. She says her husband was moody, but not unusual. Many men hide despair. Poirot sighed. Yes, and many hide anger, fear, and hatred. Interviews begin. Poirot requested permission to speak with the guests. Fournier agreed reluctantly. The name Poirot carried weight even here. The first interview was with Lady Eleanor Calthorpe. She sat stiffly, dressed in black, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Sir Raymond was a difficult man, she said quietly. But he was not suicidal. Yet you told the police he wished to be alone, Poirot said gently. Yes, he often did. Did he quarrel with anyone that evening? Her pause was brief but noticeable. He quarreled with Julian, she admitted. They always quarreled. Poirot nodded. And you? Her lips tightened. Marriage is complicated. Indeed, Poirot thought. The stepson Julian Calthorpe was less composed. He paced the room as he spoke. My stepfather treated me like a child, he said bitterly. Controlled the money. Controlled everything. Did you threaten him? Poirot asked. Julian stopped pacing. People say things they don't mean. And did you go to his room last night? Julian hesitated. No. Poirot noted the hesitation, but said nothing. The secretary Isabelle Moreau answered Poirot's questions calmly. Sir Raymond was under pressure, she said. But he was not afraid. He was angry. Angry with whom? With many people, she replied carefully. Did he fear anyone? She looked directly at Poirot. Yes, Poirot's eyebrows rose. Who? She shook her head. I cannot say. Ah, thought Poirot. Fear. A powerful motive. The business partner Victor Langley laughed too loudly when Poirot questioned him. Raymond? Suicide? Impossible. The man loved power too much. And yet, Poirot said softly, you mentioned financial difficulties. Langley's smile faded. Business is risk. Risk can create desperation, Poirot replied. Langley drained his glass. A singer on the balcony last came Sophia Bellini. She reclined gracefully, even in grief. I heard something, she said. A movement. A shadow. A shadow? Poirot repeated. Yes, on Sir Raymond's balcony. But I thought nothing of it. Poirot studied her carefully. Actors, he knew, often told the truth beautifully, and lies even better. The small detail that afternoon. Poirot returned alone to the balcony. He crouched. Examining the tiles once more, there it was. A faint. Mark near the railing too precise to be. Accidental. And something else. Something that was missing. Poirot straightened slowly. Locked doors, he murmured, are so easily misunderstood. Behind the appearance of a perfect suicide, Poirot now saw cracks. And through those cracks, murder was beginning to show its face. End of Part 2 *, Part 3. The Locked Door. Illusion. Hercule Poirot believed that locked doors were the greatest allies of murderers. They created comfort. They created certainty. Above all, they created complacency. When Inspector Fournier returned to the Hotel Bella Vista that afternoon, he found Poirot once again standing on Sir Raymond Calthorpe's balcony, his expression serene. His hands clasped behind, his back as though contemplating a landscape painting rather than a place of death. You find something new? Fournier asked skeptically. Poirot did not turn. I find, he said slowly, that people believe too easily what they wish to believe. The illusion of impossibility. The inspector folded his arms. The door was locked from the inside. That fact remains. Indeed, Poirot agreed. And because of that single fact, you close your mind. Fournier bristled. We are not amateurs, Monsieur Poirot. No, said Poirot gently. You are professionals, which is far more dangerous. Poirot finally turned, his eyes sharp. A locked door creates an illusion of impossibility. And once impossibility is accepted, murder becomes invisible. The inspector frowned but said nothing. Poirot gestured toward the balcony door. Tell me again who found it. A maid, Fournier replied. She brought fresh towels around midnight. The door was locked. No answer. She reported it in the morning. And before that? No one entered the room after Sir Raymond retired. Poirot nodded. Except, of course, the murderer. Time. The most faithful witness. Poirot requested permission to examine the corridor logbook. Every guest movement, every service call recorded with admirable precision. He studied it carefully. Sir Raymond retired at 10:30 p.m., no room service afterward. No calls, no visitors, yet Poirot's instincts rebelled. Inspector, he said, at what time was the scream heard? Approximately 11:45 p.m., several guests confirmed it. Poirot smiled faintly. Yes, the scream. He tapped the logbook. But death, monsieur, does not always announce itself at the moment it occurs. Fournier looked at him sharply. You believe Sir Raymond was already dead? Before the scream, Poirot said calmly. Yes. Reconstructing the evening, Poirot requested to speak again with the hotel staff. The maid, nervous and wide-eyed, described her route that night. I passed the Calthorpe room around 11, she said. All was quiet. And the balcony? Poirot asked. I did not look. Of course not, Poirot thought. People rarely look where they do not expect something to be. The night porter confirmed hearing footsteps near the west wing around 10:50 p.m. Who? Fournier demanded. I could not see, the porter said. But it was like someone familiar with the hotel. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. The body speaks alone once more. Poirot studied the photographs taken after Sir Raymond's death. The body lay oddly too far from the chair, too close to the railing. The angle was wrong. Poirot murmured to himself. If a man collapses naturally, he falls where he stands. If he is placed... that is different. He examined Sir Raymond's hands. No defensive wounds. No signs of struggle. But also, Poirot noted, no signs of sudden collapse. Poirot's little gray cells were busy now. The missing object. Poirot returned to the balcony and crouched low, near the edge. Almost invisible to the untrained eye was a faint semicircular mark, like the outline of something once resting there. Something heavy. Something removed. A weapon? Poirot murmured. Or merely a prop? He smiled. Theater, he said softly. Always theater. The neighboring balcony. Poirot next visited the balcony adjacent to Sir Raymond Sophia Bellini's. He observed the low marble divider between them. How easy, Poirot said aloud. To cross. He leaned over slightly. From one balcony, the other was easily reachable. And more importantly, unseen from below. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Human nature and assumptions that evening. Poirot invited Inspector Fournier to join him in the lounge. You assume, Poirot said, that because no one saw a person enter or leave. No one did. Yes. And you assume, Poirot continued, that because a door was locked, it could only be locked by the victim. Correct. Poirot sighed. Two assumptions. Both incorrect. He leaned forward. A door may be locked from the inside. After death. Fournier stared at him. Poirot continued calmly. A body may be arranged to suggest collapse. A scream may be delayed. A scene may be staged, but how? The inspector demanded. Who would take such risk? Poirot's voice softened. Someone who planned. Someone who understood not mechanics but people. Tension among the guests that night. Poirot observed the guests closely. Julian Calthorpe avoided the West Wing entirely. Lady Eleanor watched everyone, and no one. Victor Langley drank again. Louder than usual, Isabelle Moreau sat quietly, her eyes following Poirot, and Sophia Bellini performed grief beautifully. Poirot caught her gaze once, for a moment, just a moment. Her expression hardened. The attempted interference at 2:15 a.m. Poirot was awakened by movement. Footsteps. Careful. Deliberate. Poirot rose silently and opened his door just enough to see a shadow at the end of the corridor. Someone entered Sir Raymond's room. Poirot did not follow. Waited. In the morning, he returned to the balcony. Something had been disturbed. A faint mark erased. Not well, but enough. Poirot smiled sadly. Too late, he murmured. The truth does not disappear so easily. Poirot's quiet certainty. Inspector Fournier confronted him later that day. You are certain now? He asked. Poirot nodded. The locked door, he said, was not a protection. It was a distraction. And the murderer? Poirot paused. He said. That I will not yet reveal. He straightened his tie. But I will say this. The murderer believes themselves very clever. Poirot's eyes hardened. That is always their mistake. Closing reflection as the sun set over the sea. Poirot stood once more on the balcony. So elegant, so peaceful, so deceptive. A perfect illusion, he said softly. And somewhere inside the Hotel Bella Vista, someone realized with growing fear that Hercule Poirot was no longer merely suspicious. He was certain. Part 4, Lies Spoken. Softly, Hercule Poirot had often remarked that people lied most convincingly when they believed themselves justified. At the Hotel Bella Vista, justification lay everywhere, wrapped in grief, in fear, in love, in money. The corridors were once again quiet, but it was not the quiet of peace. It was the quiet of people listening, measuring their words, rehearsing their faces before stepping into public view. Poirot intended to listen more carefully than anyone. The language of small lies. Poirot requested that Inspector Fournier allow him to conduct a series of private conversations, uninterrupted, informal, and most importantly unrecorded. People speak differently, Poirot explained, when they are not defending themselves against the law, but against their own conscience. Fournier agreed. Though uneasily, Poirot began with Lady Eleanor Calthorpe. Lady Eleanor, the politeness of resentment she received Poirot in her sitting room. Seated very straight, her hands gloved despite the warmth. "You loved your husband?" Poirot asked gently. She smiled faintly. "Love is a complicated word, Monsieur Poirot." "Yes," Poirot agreed. "So is endurance." Her eyes flickered, just slightly. Poirot continued softly. "Sir Raymond was not a kind man." Lady Eleanor exhaled slowly. "He was commanding, cruel." Her lips tightened. "He believed in control." Poirot nodded. "And when control fails, anger follows." Silence stretched. "At dinner," Poirot said, "your husband spoke sharply to you." "Yes." "You did not respond?" "No." "Why?" She looked at him then, really looked. "Because arguing never changed anything." Poirot inclined his head. "A learned survival." He paused. "Did Sir Raymond fear anyone?" Her answer came too quickly. "No," Poirot smiled politely. "Madame, when a person answers too quickly, they are not remembering. They are protecting." Her composure cracked for a second. He feared consequences, she said finally. "From whom?" She stood abruptly. "I am tired, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot rose at once. "Of course." As he left, he murmured softly, "Resentment does not kill, but it watches." Julian Calthorpe. Anger without patience. Julian met Poirot on the terrace, pacing like a caged animal. "You think I killed him?" Julian said bluntly. "No," Poirot replied. "I think you wanted to." Julian laughed harshly. "Everyone did." Poirot watched him carefully. "You argued with Sir Raymond that night?" "Yes." "About money?" "About freedom." Poirot tilted his head. "Tell me, if your stepfather had died naturally, what would have changed for you?" Julian hesitated. "Everything. And if he had died violently?" Julian swallowed. "The same." Poirot nodded. "Then violence gains you nothing." Julian's shoulders slumped slightly. "You left the dining room early," Poirot said. "Yes. I went for a walk." "Where?" "Along the cliffs. Alone?" Julian snapped. "Yes." Poirot smiled mildly. "Such anger, mon ami. But anger is noisy. Murder requires silence." Julian turned away. Fists clenched. Poirot noted it carefully. Isabelle Moreau. The discipline of fear. Isabelle Moreau was calm, too calm. She sat with perfect posture. Her answers precise. "You were loyal to Sir Raymond," Poirot said. "Yes." "He trusted you." "In business matters. And personally?" A pause. "No." Poirot leaned forward slightly. "Did Sir Raymond threaten you?" Her eyes widened imperceptibly. "No." Poirot waited. "I mean he was demanding," she corrected. "Demanding secrecy?" Her breath caught. Poirot said gently, "Mademoiselle, fear is the most honest emotion. It always betrays itself." Tears filled her eyes, but did not fall. "He was involved in something illegal," she whispered. "If it became known, many would suffer." "Did you kill him to stop it?" She shook her head vehemently. "No, I was afraid of him, but not enough to kill." Poirot nodded. "Fear, yes. Murder, no. Victor Langley." The lie of laughter. Victor Langley greeted Poirot with forced cheer. "Still playing detective?" He joked. Poirot smiled thinly. "Always." They spoke of business, out of debts, out of shared secrets. "You owed Sir Raymond money," Poirot observed. Langley shrugged. "Business. You argued that night. Men argue." Poirot's eyes sharpened. "Did you go to his room?" Langley hesitated, just a fraction too long. "No." Poirot stood. "Monsieur Langley, you lie badly. But you lie for the wrong reason." Langley stiffened. "You are hiding something," Poirot continued. "But not murder." Langley exhaled shakily. "Yes," he muttered. "I was blackmailed. But I didn't kill him." Poirot believed him. Greed kills impulsively. This murder was patient. Sophia Bellini. Performance and truth. Sophia Bellini received Poirot dramatically reclining. Dressed elegantly, grief-worn-like costume. "You heard something," Poirot said. "Yes, a sound. A presence. You did not look?" "No. Why?" She smiled. "Because I did not wish to be involved." Poirot studied her intently. "Mademoiselle, you live your life on stage, yes. Then you know this when people perform. They exaggerate." Her smile faded slightly. "The shadow you described," Poirot said, "was unnecessary." She stiffened. "You added it," Poirot continued, "to give your story weight." She said nothing. Poirot stood. Truth does not need decoration. Poirot's reflection that evening. Poirot sat alone, reviewing every conversation. Everyone had lied, but their lies differed. Lady Eleanor lied to preserve dignity. Julian lied to protect pride. Isabel lied to survive. Victor lied to escape shame. Sophia lied to control perception. Only one lie Poirot knew was designed to hide inaction, and that lie was still incomplete. Poirot and walked slowly toward the west wing. There, near Sir Raymond's room. He paused. He looked not at the door, but at the space between doors. Distance. Timing. Opportunity. Poirot single quotes. Eyes gleamed. "Ah," he murmured softly. "Now I see." Closing. Thought the murderer had not relied on strength, nor on chance. They had relied on something far more. Reliable. Politeness. And the certainty that no one listens. Carefully to soft voices. But Hercule Poirot did. And the net was tightening. Part 5. The woman. On the adjacent balcony. Hercule Poirot had always maintained that witnesses were the most dangerous pieces of evidence. Objects did not lie. Time did not lie. But people reshaped truth as easily as they adjusted a shawl around their shoulders. They remembered what suited them, forgot what frightened them, and embroidered what made them feel important. And Sophia Bellini, Poirot reflected as he walked slowly toward the east wing, was a woman who lived by embroidery. A balcony between two worlds, the balcony adjoining Sir Raymond Calthorpe's, had become, overnight, a place of fascination. Guests glanced at it discreetly as they passed, some with curiosity, others with discomfort. The low marble divider, once merely an architectural detail, now seemed charged with meaning. Poirot stepped out onto Sophia Bellini's balcony alone. The sea spread endlessly before him, calm and indifferent. Below, waves broke gently against the rocks, a soft rhythm that mocked human drama. Poirot leaned lightly on the railing and studied the space. From this balcony, Sir Raymond's had been perfectly visible. perfectly reachable. And crucially, partially hidden from the view of the hotel grounds below. Poirot nodded to himself. Yes, he murmured. Very convenient. Sophia Bellini reconsidered. Sophia Bellini agreed to meet Poirot in the late afternoon. She wore a flowing silk robe, her dark hair loosely pinned, her expression composed but alert. She was no longer playing the grieving neighbor. This was the professional woman, wary of traps. "You wish to speak again?" she said lightly. "Yes," Poirot replied. "About the night you heard something." She gestured for him to sit. "I have already told the police everything." "And yet," Poirot said gently, "what you told me was incomplete." Her eyes sharpened. "Incomplete? You said you heard a presence," Poirot continued. "You described a shadow." "Yes," Poirot smiled. "But you did not say when you heard it." She hesitated. "Time," Poirot said softly, "is always important." The problem of timing. Sophia sighed and walked toward the balcony doors, pushing them open. It was late. "I was preparing for bed." "At 11:45? Poirot asked. Her head snapped around. "How did you heard the scream then?" Poirot said calmly. "Everyone did." She frowned. "Yes, but the shadow," Poirot pressed. "You saw or imagined it earlier?" Silence. Poirot waited. "Before 11, she admitted finally. Poirot nodded. "Thank you, mademoiselle." She laughed nervously. "You make it sound as though that matters." "Oh, it matters very much," Poirot said. A dangerous clarification. Poirot leaned forward. "You see, if someone was on Sir Raymond's balcony before 11, then they were there before the time everyone believes he died." Sophia's fingers tightened on the arm of her chair. "I did not say it was a person," she said quickly. "Only a shadow." "Of course," Poirot replied. "But shadows require bodies." Her gaze hardened. "What are you implying, Monsieur Poirot?" "That you saw something you did not understand," Poirot said. "And later you altered it, perhaps unconsciously, to fit what everyone else believed." Sophia rose abruptly. "I am an artist, not a criminal." Poirot stood as well. "And artists, mademoiselle, are experts in illusion." The near accident that evening. The hotel was shaken once more. A scream this time from the marble staircase near the west wing. Guests rushed out to find Isabelle Moreau collapsed at the foot of the stairs, pale and trembling. She had slipped, she claimed. Missed a step. Nearly broken her neck. Nearly. Poirot arrived moments later and knelt beside her. "An accident?" he asked gently. Isabelle nodded, shaking. "Yes, I lost my balance." Poirot's eyes moved to the stair railing. There, barely visible, was a faint smear, not dust, not polish. Grease. Very carefully applied. Poirot straightened slowly. Someone had wanted Isabelle Moreau silenced. A change in the game. Inspector Fournier was furious. "This goes beyond coincidence," he snapped. "Someone is interfering with the investigation." Poirot agreed. "Yes, the murderer grows nervous." "Why her?" Fournier demanded. Poirot replied quietly. "Because she knows something she does not yet realize she knows." Isabelle was moved to another room, under guard, and somewhere in the hotel. Fear sharpened into panic. Poirot's mental reconstruction. Late that night, Poirot sat alone in his room, recreating the sequence in his mind. Before 11, a figure crosses from one balcony to another. Sir Raymond is alive. There is no struggle, or only a very brief one. After 11, the body is arranged. The balcony door is locked. Time passes. At 11:45, a scream deliberately timed. Yes. Poirot closed his eyes. This was not a crime of passion, he murmured. It was a performance. Sophia's fear. Poirot encountered Sophia Bellini once more by chance. Or so it appeared near the terrace. She looked shaken. You think someone tried to kill her? Sophia said quietly. I am certain, Poirot replied. Sophia swallowed. And if she had died? Then the truth would have died with her, Poirot said. Sophia looked away. I did not mean to lie. Poirot softened. No, you meant to protect yourself. She whispered, Am I in danger? Poirot met her gaze steadily. Not if you tell the truth from now on. She nodded slowly. I saw someone, she said. Clearly. Crossing the balcony. Poirot did not ask who. Not yet. Closing realization as Poirot returned to his room. He felt the investigation shift. The murderer was no longer hidden behind elegance and silence. They were afraid. They had tried to erase a witness. They had failed. And now, the balcony, once a place of beauty, had become a narrow bridge between guilt and exposure. Poirot smiled grimly. The theater, he said softly, is almost over. Part 6. Money, Power, and Fear. Hercule Poirot had often observed that murder was rarely born in the moment of violence. It was conceived much earlier, in whispered threats, in quiet humiliations, in contracts signed with smiling hands and treacherous clauses. At the Hotel Bella Vista, fear had begun to seep through the walls like damp. Doors closed more quickly now. Conversations stopped when footsteps approached. The murderer, Poirot knew, had crossed an invisible line, from confidence to desperation, and desperation made mistakes. The shape of power. Poirot requested access to Sir Raymond Calthorpe's papers. Inspector Fournier hesitated. They are business documents. Ah, said Poirot mildly. Then they are human documents. Late that afternoon, Poirot sat at a small desk in a quiet sitting room, methodically reviewing letters, contracts, and notes. At first glance, everything appeared orderly, precisely the kind of order Sir Raymond would insist upon. But Poirot noticed something else. Patterns. There were repeated references to shell companies, payments routed through intermediaries, and contracts written in language that shifted responsibility without appearing to do so. Sir Raymond had not merely been wealthy. He had been powerful. And power, Poirot reflected, is never shared willingly. Isabelle Moreau's secret burden. Isabelle Moreau, still shaken from her near-fatal fall, agreed to speak again. This time, she was no longer composed. I should have told someone sooner, she said quietly. Poirot nodded encouragingly. Sir Raymond used me, she continued. Not in the way people imagine, but worse. He made me responsible. For what? Poirot asked. For documents that were illegal. If discovered, I would have been blamed. He made sure of that. Poirot closed his eyes briefly. And if you refused? He reminded me of my family, she whispered. Of how easily lives can be ruined. Poirot said softly, So you lived in fear? Yes. Did he fear you? She hesitated. He feared exposure, always. Poirot opened his eyes. And who else knew? Isabelle swallowed. Victor Langley. And she stopped. And whom? Poirot prompted gently. Lady Eleanor, she said. Lady Eleanor's quiet rebellion. Poirot sought Lady Eleanor that evening. She was no longer wearing black. An act of defiance. Poirot thought. You knew, Poirot said without preamble. She did not pretend otherwise. Yes, she said calmly. I knew what he did, and you stayed. I had no power, she replied. Until recently. Poirot leaned forward. What changed? She smiled faintly. He planned to cut me off, financially, publicly. He had already prepared the documents. Poirot absorbed this. And Julian? Her expression softened. My son would have been ruined. Poirot nodded. Protection, fear, love, all-powerful forces. Victor Langley breaks Victor. Langley was drunk when Poirot found him. Raymond was a monster, Langley slurred. You know that? Poirot remained standing. Yes, he controlled everything, Langley continued bitterly. He owned people. Did he own you? Langley laughed harshly. He tried. And when you resisted? He threatened exposure. Poirot watched him carefully. Did you consider killing him? Langley stared at the floor. Every day. Poirot waited. But I didn't, Langley said hoarsely. I'm not brave enough. Poirot believed him. Courage, he knew, was essential for this crime that the balcony revisited. With new eyes, Poirot returned once more to the balcony. Now, armed with knowledge, he saw it differently. This was not a place of opportunity, that it was a place of control. From here, Sir Raymond had overseen everything: his wife, his stepson, his secretary, his partner. The balcony was symbolic, elevated, commanding. And from here, someone had removed him. Poirot murmured, "Power creates enemies, but fear creates executioners." The failed second crime inspector Fournier joined Poirot that night. "You were right," Fournier admitted. "The attempt on Miss Moreau, someone wanted her gone." "Yes," Poirot agreed. "Because she carried the final piece." "What piece?" Poirot looked at him gravely. "Knowledge that Sir Raymond planned to act very soon." "Act how?" "To destroy someone completely." Fournier stiffened. "Whom?" Poirot did not answer. Not yet. Fear reveals itself late that night. Poirot observed the guests discreetly from the lounge. Julian Calthorpe sat alone, staring into his drink. His usual anger replaced by something colder. Lady Eleanor spoke quietly with Sophia Bellini, her posture rigid. Victor Langley avoided everyone. Sophia Bellini, however, was no longer performing. Her hands trembled. Poirot noticed fear. Again the central truth, in his room. Poirot assembled the truth carefully. Sir Raymond had planned something irreversible. Someone had discovered it. That person had not acted in rage, but in calculation. They had chosen timing, location, illusion. They had chosen the balcony. Poirot straightened his tie slowly. "The motive," he said softly, "is no longer hidden. It was not greed. It was not jealousy. It was fear of annihilation." Closing reflection as dawn approached. Poirot stood by the window, watching the sea change color. Money corrupts, he reflected. Power enslaves. But fear convinces ordinary people to do extraordinary things, including murder. And now, the murderer knew that Poirot understood, which meant only one thing. They would either confess or make one final mistake. Part 7. The False Clue. Hercule Poirot had always understood one essential truth about human nature. People can be manipulated almost as easily as they manipulate others. They lie to protect themselves. They lie to deceive. They lie to entertain the ego, but when presented with what appears to be the truth, they cling to it as though it were salvation. It was with this knowledge that Poirot devised what he called the false clue, a strategic deception designed not to mislead himself, but to draw the murderer into revealing their own mind. A carefully placed suggestion. The morning after the previous day's revelations, Poirot requested the presence of Inspector Fournier in his suite. The Frenchman entered with his habitual blend of impatience and professional pride. "Monsieur Poirot," he began, "the case is complicated. And yet, we are no closer to identifying the murderer." Poirot gestured toward the balcony. "Ah, but we are much closer than you believe. You see, the human mind is very instructive when it is given a direction. I intend to provide direction and watch what happens." Fournier frowned. "Direction?" "Yes, I will plant a suggestion, a clue visible yet misleading. A subtle arrangement that all may see and assume the conclusion. And then, we observe the reactions." Fournier was skeptical, but intrigued. "You are certain this will work?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Certain, monsieur. Certain that one among our company cannot resist the trap we shall set." Planting the false clue, Poirot returned to the balcony of Sir Raymond Calthorpe, where he meticulously arranged certain objects. The small round stain he had previously noticed on the tiles was accentuated, so that it suggested the movement of a small, heavy object across the balcony. A vase, which had originally been positioned near the railing, was moved closer to the balcony door, angled so that it appeared it might have been the murder weapon. Poirot deliberately left an envelope in full view on the balcony table, partially open, as though it contained a last-minute confession or a critical clue pointing to someone's culpability. Each adjustment was minor, almost invisible, but the human mind perceives what it wants to perceive. By mid-afternoon, the scene was set. Poirot and Fournier waited, in shadows, in the lounge opposite Sir Raymond's suite, with a clear view of the balcony. Reactions begin. The first to appear was Julian Calthorpe. He approached the balcony cautiously, stopping abruptly as he noticed the arrangement. His eyes widened. He took several steps back, as though the evidence was accusing him directly. He studied the envelope, then glanced nervously toward the suite. Julian whispered to himself. Poirot's little gray cells worked rapidly. This reaction was interesting. Julian had the motive of both fear and anger, but would he act? Next came Lady Eleanor. She paused at the balcony, her gaze sweeping the floor. She adjusted her gloves, then seemed to ignore the objects entirely. Her behavior was composed but cautious, suggesting a mind carefully controlling its expressions. Victor Langley arrived shortly after, slightly unsteady from midday refreshments. He approached the balcony slowly, peering over the railing. His hand twitched toward the envelope before he withdrew it quickly. A flicker of panic crossed his face. Sophia Bellini lingered in the doorway of her adjacent balcony. She looked intently at the balcony, observing the stage scene. Her expression hardened, part fear, part calculation. Poirot noted it carefully. Conversations and observation. Poirot leaned toward Fournier. "You see, monsieur. Each person responds according to their inner truth. Julian reacts to accusation, though none is present. Lady Eleanor observes, controlling emotion. Victor is tempted and frightened. And Sophia?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Sophia is calculating. She is considering carefully who is watching her and what they can perceive." Fournier asked, "And this helps us how?" "It is simple," Poirot said. "The guilty mind cannot resist being observed. They will give themselves away, either through action or reaction. They betray themselves when confronted, even with a false truth." An unexpected movement. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the cliffs, a shadow crossed the balcony. Fournier turned sharply. "Who is that?" Poirot had already risen. "Watch closely, mon ami." Sophia Bellini appeared at the edge of the balcony, stepping carefully toward the railing. She glanced nervously at the envelope, then unexpectedly moved it, closing it deliberately. Poirot observed, his eyes narrowing. "Ah, the conscience reacts." He whispered to Fournier, "See how subtle fear operates. She assumes the envelope contains the truth she wants to conceal, so she corrects it." Sophia retreated, lingering only long enough to glance over her shoulder. Her movements were precise, calculated, but not enough to evade observation entirely. Poirot made a note in his mental ledger, misleading the mind. Later that night, Poirot visited the dining room where the remaining guests gathered. Conversation was subdued, nerves frayed by repeated investigations and close observation. Poirot addressed them casually, almost conversationally. One wonders what would have happened had the envelope contained evidence of misdeed. Perhaps someone would panic. Perhaps someone would act without thought. He allowed the statement to hang in the air, then excused himself. Minutes later, Inspector Fournier observed Julian pacing, muttering under his breath. Victor Langley repeatedly glanced toward the balcony. Lady Eleanor maintained her composure, but even she seemed tense. Poirot had achieved the first phase of the trap, the unseen tremor. The following day, Poirot revisited Sir Raymond's suite. He noted a minor disturbance. The envelope had been moved slightly again, and a faint fingerprint was visible near the flap. This was not Victor, nor Julian, nor Lady Eleanor. Poirot crouched, inspecting the pattern. Sophia Bellini had handled the envelope a second time, this time more deliberately, and had not realized the minute trace she left behind. "Aha!" Poirot whispered to himself. "Patience and observation reveal more than force ever could." The trap tightens. Poirot's plan required no confrontation. The false clue would operate alone, its presence pressing the guilty toward revelation. He studied the human behavior with clinical precision. Julian Calthorpe exhibited guilt and fear, but only about timing and appearance. Lady Eleanor maintained dignity, suggesting indirect knowledge but no direct involvement. Victor Langley's anxiety was superficial, rooted in blackmail and prior business misconduct. Isabelle Moreau was sequestered safely, still trembling from the prior incident. Sophia Bellini displayed a complex combination of fear, calculation, and control enough to suggest she had observed or handled critical information. Poirot smiled faintly. Yes, the reaction will tell the truth better than accusation ever could. Observing the reaction the next evening, Poirot arranged for all suspects to be present in the lounge. He gestured casually to the balcony. Perhaps someone would like to observe the scene once more. Sophia's eyes flicked to the balcony. She approached, her expression measured, deliberate, but tense. Poirot watched, noting every micro-expression, every hesitation. Her fingers brushed against the railing. She glanced around the room. She lingered near the envelope, then withdrew her hand quickly, as if startled by the act itself. Poirot's mind worked rapidly. The false clue had served its purpose. Fear and guilt had combined to provoke behavior that revealed the direction of her thoughts. The inner conflict later, in the quiet of his suite. Poirot reflected. "The murderer," he whispered, "is a careful person. But even the careful cannot escape the pressure of observation. They adjust to misdirection, but misdirection itself is a mirror. And a mirror, mon ami, always reflects the truth." He wrote notes in a small leather notebook. The observations, minute and seemingly inconsequential, would now allow him to reconstruct the sequence with absolute precision. Timing of Sir Raymond's death, the manipulation of the balcony scene, the movements of witnesses and potential actors, the interplay of fear and observation all converged in Poirot's mind as a single tapestry. Ready to reveal the murderer. The murderer reacts that night. Poirot noticed an unusual absence. Sophia Bellini did not appear for dinner. Fournier frowned. "She's avoiding company." Poirot smiled faintly. Not avoiding, hiding, from herself as much as from others. In the small hours, Poirot observed her entering the balcony corridor. She approached Sir Raymond's balcony cautiously, glanced toward the envelope, then without hesitation touched it. Her expression betrayed panic, almost disbelief. Poirot whispered softly to himself, "Yes. Now we shall see the final error." Closing thought. The false clue had done its work. It had extracted a reaction. It had provoked the guilty to reveal the truth without a single word of accusation. Hercule Poirot, as always, relied not on force or presumption, but on human nature itself. And human nature, he knew, always speaks if one listens carefully enough. The final act, he reflected, was approaching. The murderer, thinking themselves clever, had begun to unravel. And Poirot, as ever, was ready. Part 8. The balcony revisited. Hercule Poirot had long maintained that a crime, no matter how carefully planned, could always be reconstructed. Not through intuition alone, nor through confessions, nor even through evidence taken at face value, but through the meticulous study of time, space, and human behavior. Every action leaves a trace, subtle but undeniable. And the balcony of Sir Raymond Calthorpe was no exception. Assembling the suspects, Poirot requested the presence of all the key figures in the grand lounge of the Hotel Bella Vista. The room was filled with the muted tension of people who knew something terrible had occurred, but were not yet certain they would be held accountable. Lady Eleanor Calthorpe arrived first, followed by Julian Victor Langley, and reluctantly, Sophia Bellini. Isabel Moreau, still recovering from the near-fatal fall, remained sequestered in her room under gentle supervision. Inspector Fournier was present, a mixture of impatience and intrigue on his face. Poirot stood at the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes moved deliberately over each person, noting the smallest gestures, the tapping of fingers, the tightening of jaws, the avoidance of eye contact. Mes Amis, he began in his soft, deliberate French-accented English. We gather here today not to accuse, but to understand. For the crime we investigate is not simple. It is a masterpiece of illusion, carefully arranged to deceive all who observe it. Yet, as always, the truth cannot remain hidden from those who observe diligently. He paused, allowing the weight of the statement to settle. Step 1. Timing. Poirot turned toward the balcony door. First, we consider the moment of death. All witnesses, all records, indicate that Sir Raymond retired to his balcony around 10:30 p.m. The scream that alerted everyone came at 11:45 p.m. He fixed the guests with his keen gaze. Yet the body itself and its final position indicate that the act of murder occurred much earlier, approximately 10:50 p.m. This timing is critical. It proves that the scream was intentionally delayed, designed to create an illusion of a later death. Julian shifted uneasily. Lady Eleanor remained composed, but a faint tightening of her lips betrayed attention. Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly. Poirot continued. Timing is a weapon. The murderer chose the moment of scream to control perception. They relied upon the natural assumptions of observers. Step 2. The locked door. Poirot gestured toward the balcony. Next, consider the door. Locked from the inside. Many assumed this proved a suicide. Yet, as we know, a clever person can lock a door from the inside even after leaving or after placing a body. He demonstrated using a small replica key and latch mechanism he had brought from his room. Notice how a simple device, left in position, allows the door to appear locked even when opened later. An ordinary observer would never detect this. Victor Langley swallowed audibly. Julian's hands fidgeted in his lap. Lady Eleanor's expression remained calm, but Poirot's gaze lingered upon her as if weighing every micro-expression. Step 3. Body placement. Poirot moved toward the balcony. The body was arranged deliberately. See how the arm is twisted, how the legs are positioned. A natural collapse would place the body differently closer to the railing, with arms falling where balance is lost. The murderer considered every angle, creating a scene that looked accidental, but was, in fact, carefully composed. He bent down to indicate the approximate angle. Even the tiles bear traces, subtle scuff marks, faint impressions of a heavy object moved. These minor details betray calculation. They are the fingerprints of intent. Step 4. The balcony as stage. Poirot turned his attention to the adjacent balcony. The balcony itself was a stage. From the neighboring room, one could observe movements without being seen. Shadows were cast deliberately to create uncertainty in witnesses. The person on the balcony could manipulate perception, appear and disappear, create the illusion of movement, and control what others thought they saw. Sophia Bellini shifted uncomfortably. Poirot's eyes softened slightly, though his focus remained sharp. And you, mademoiselle, observed. But did you not also contribute to the illusion, perhaps unknowingly, by reacting and thus confirming the stagecraft? Sophia's lips parted slightly, then closed. She remained silent. Step 5. Witness testimony and human nature. Poirot turned to the group. Now we consider human witnesses. Each person's account was shaped by expectation and fear. Lady Eleanor, you sought to preserve dignity. Julian, you sought to justify your own anger. Victor, you hoped to deflect attention. And Sophia, you sought to control perception. He allowed the statement to sink in. It is in these very reactions that the murderer is revealed. The guilty mind cannot resist the pressure of observation. The truth becomes apparent in gestures, in hesitation, in overcorrection. Step 6. The method revealed. Poirot now reconstructed the sequence with deliberate precision. Sir Raymond was confronted quietly, perhaps on the balcony itself, by the murderer sometime between 10:45 and 10:50 p.m. A struggle occurred, minimal but decisive. The murderer did not require strength, merely cunning and timing. The body was arranged deliberately to create a misleading collapse. Minor details, tiles, the vase, the envelope were manipulated to create a false narrative. The door was secured from the inside using a subtle mechanism to give the appearance of impossibility. The scream was delayed until 11:45 p.m., ensuring that witnesses would assume a later death. Reinforcing the suicide narrative, Poirot paused, allowing the assembled group to absorb the intricacy. See how precise, how elegant, how diabolically clever. Yet, even a masterpiece of calculation leaves traces. And these traces cannot deceive the vigilant mind. Step 7. The clues they missed. Poirot gestured toward the envelope that had been placed on the balcony earlier as a false clue. Even a planted object can be revealing. The envelope was touched, moved, and observed, not all at once, not by everyone, but enough to provoke reactions. It was not evidence, but a mirror. And human reactions to the mirror tell us what we need to know. Fournier's jaw tightened. So the guilty party revealed themselves through fear? Poirot nodded. Exactly, monsieur. Fear cannot be controlled. Even the most clever will falter under observation. Step 8. Understanding the motive. Poirot now directed his attention to Lady Eleanor and Julian. The motive was not sudden, not born of passion alone. It was fear of loss, fear of exposure, fear of annihilation. Money and power were the instruments, but fear was the hand that guided them. The murderer acted to prevent the consequences that they alone foresaw. And in doing so, they misjudged human nature. And my patience. Step 9. The psychological trap. Poirot leaned forward slightly. Observe, Ms. Amos, how every action has its reflection. The murderer believes themselves clever. They act in secrecy. They manipulate the scene. Yet every human mind perceives, reacts, and betrays. In attempting to create perfection, they expose imperfection. He glanced at Sophia Bellini. The balcony was your stage, mademoiselle, as it was the murderer's. But observation, the truth, and fear all conspire to undo even the most careful plans. Sophia's hands trembled slightly. She did not speak, but her silence was eloquent. Closing reflection. Poirot stepped back from the balcony, letting the room absorb his demonstration. Do you see, Ms. Amos? He said quietly. How a crime can be reconstructed without speculation. Time, space, human nature, and observation are all sufficient. The physical evidence tells its story. The human evidence, subtle, psychological, often ignored, tells even more. And the combination reveals the murderer. Inspector Fournier, pale and tense, nodded. It is remarkable. Poirot smiled faintly. It is simple, monsieur. But simplicity is often overlooked. Murder is always less clever than it appears. Even when performed with precision, it leaves traces if one knows where and how to look. He folded his hands behind his back, gazing at the balcony once more. The final act is approaching. The murderer, convinced of their own cunning, is about to make the mistake that will reveal everything. Part 9. The little gray cells beside Hercule Poirot often reminded Captain Hastings that the human mind was a labyrinth. And the labyrinth, Poirot insisted, left subtle traces for the observant detective to follow. Strength, Opportunity and circumstance were important, but without the careful application of reason, without the little gray cells, no mystery could ever truly be solved. At the Hotel Bella Vista, those little gray cells were about to reach their inevitable conclusion. Gathering the suspects, Poirot requested that all key figures meet in the lounge once again. The air was thick with tension. Each person knew that a breakthrough was imminent, though none could predict its form. Lady Eleanor Calthorpe arrived first, composed and dignified, her eyes shadowed by a hint of apprehension. Julian, restless and sullen, lingered at the doorway. Victor Langley's confident facade was beginning to crumble. Even Sophia Bellini, ever elegant and poised, seemed less certain of herself. Poirot addressed them with calm authority. Mes amis, today we consider not merely the evidence you see, nor the testimony you hear, but the inner workings of the human mind. The little gray cells, as I call them, reveal that which is hidden. And when we apply them carefully, the truth becomes inevitable. Step 1. Reconstructing motivation. Poirot moved slowly around the lounge. Let us begin with fear. Fear drives action, often hidden beneath the mask of politeness, of composure, of routine. Sir Raymond Calthorpe was a man of influence, yes, but he also wielded fear. He used it to control those around him. And fear, in turn, provokes reaction. The murderer, confronted with this fear, acted to protect themselves. He paused, fixing Julian with a calm, penetrating gaze. Who among you feared Sir Raymond enough to take deliberate action? Julian's eyes flickered, but he said nothing. Lady Eleanor shifted slightly, a subtle sign of emotional involvement. Victor Langley's hand tightened around his glass. And Sophia Bellini, ever graceful, allowed a barely perceptible tremor in her fingers. Step 2. The sequence of actions. Poirot drew a diagram on the table, indicating the balcony, the positions of all relevant objects, and the timing of movements. The sequence is precise, he said. Sir Raymond retires at 10:30 p.m. The fatal act occurs between 10:45 and 10:50 p.m. The body is arranged deliberately, and the scream is delayed until 11:45 p.m., ensuring witnesses perceive a later time of death. The door is locked from the inside, yet manipulated so that it appears secure. Every detail is intended to mislead. He glanced at Sophia Bellini. But even perfection is imperfect when observed carefully. Sophia looked away, but Poirot's smile was gentle, almost sympathetic. Step 3. The psychological flaw. Poirot walked among the guests. Now we consider the flaw. Every murderer believes themselves clever, yet even the cleverest cannot resist responding to subtle pressure. Human nature is consistent. Guilt manifests in gestures, hesitation, and reactions to perceived observation. This is why the planted envelope, though false, worked as a mirror. It revealed fear, uncertainty, and awareness. The guilty mind cannot resist. He paused, letting the implications settle over the room. And it is by observing these reactions that we identify the culprit. Step 4. The culprit's reaction. Poirot now turned his attention to Sophia Bellini. Mademoiselle, you reacted. You manipulated the envelope and the scene. But in doing so, you betrayed your knowledge of the true sequence. Fear guided your hands, and in the act of concealment, you revealed what you hoped to hide. You are the one who acted on the balcony. Sophia's composure faltered. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Poirot continued gently. The act was not spontaneous nor done in anger. It was deliberate, calculated, and motivated by the desire to prevent exposure of a secret, something you feared would ruin you. Perhaps more than Sir Raymond's death itself. Her gaze fell to the floor. Step 5. The method confirmed. Poirot moved closer to the diagram on the table. The balcony, the door, the timing, the body placement, all elements point to a single actor who had the opportunity, the skill, and the motive. Only someone with the ability to move unseen, to manipulate perception, and to act with calm precision, could have executed this plan. He pointed to the faint marks he had noticed on the balcony tiles and railing. And these subtle traces, overlooked by ordinary eyes, reveal the path taken. The little gray cells, applied methodically, leave no room for error. Step 6. Confronting the murderer. Poirot fixed Sophia Bellini with a steady gaze. Mademoiselle, you sought to preserve your reputation and your freedom. You believed that, by creating an illusion of suicide and manipulating the perceptions of others, you would escape scrutiny. Yet even perfection is betrayed by human nature. Sophia finally spoke, her voice trembling. It was necessary. I could not let him expose me. Everything depended on it. Poirot nodded. Indeed, necessity is the language of fear. And fear often leads to mistakes subtle, but revealing. Inspector Fournier stepped forward. So it is confirmed? Sophia Bellini killed Sir Raymond Calthorpe? Poirot inclined his head. Yes, the evidence, the observation, and the reactions all converged to one conclusion. The act was deliberate, the timing calculated, the staging precise. But no human action is beyond detection if one knows how to observe. Step 7. Resolution. Sophia Bellini sank into a chair, defeated. She did not resist as the inspector prepared to take her into custody. Poirot, observing the subdued group of remaining guests, reflected quietly. Observe, mes amis. The truth does not require force. It requires patience, observation, and the correct application of the little gray cells. Human nature betrays even the most careful designs, and justice, though delayed, is inevitable. Lady Eleanor touched Julian's arm gently. Victor Langley exhaled, relieved, though still unsettled. The hotel staff looked on with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Poirot's gaze returned to the balcony. Now silent, still, and empty of all secrets. Closing reflection as the night deepened over the Hotel Bella Vista. Poirot stood by the window of his suite, watching the sea. Crime, he whispered, is rarely what it appears. The appearance may be elegant, precise, even convincing. But behind it is always human nature, and human nature is predictable if one observes carefully and thinks deeply. The little gray cells, mes amis, are the ultimate witness. He closed his eyes briefly, savoring the quiet victory. The murderer had been revealed. Justice would be carried out, and once again, the order of reason had prevailed over the chaos of fear, greed, and deception. Part 10. Justice on the balcony, the Hotel Bella Vista. Once a place of serene elegance, had transformed over the past week into a theater of human drama. Secrets had been unearthed, fears had been revealed, and a life had been taken, but as Hercule Poirot observed from his suite overlooking the sea, justice, like the tide, was patient and inevitable. Tonight, Poirot prepared for the final act, a reckoning that would leave no room for doubt. The morning after revelation, the sun rose slowly, casting soft gold across the balconies. Guests moved quietly through the halls, subdued but aware that the shadow of death and deception had passed among them. The staff whispered nervously. The corridor that led to Sir Raymond Calthorpe's suite was cleared for the final assembly. Poirot walked the familiar path, noting the smallest details. The faint marks on the balcony tiles remained visible. The door, once manipulated, now revealed its secrets to the observant. The envelope, once a false clue designed to provoke reaction, had been preserved as a testament to the power of subtle human psychology. He had requested the presence of all the remaining guests for a formal explanation of the events and opportunity to lay bare the mechanics of crime, the motives, and the consequences. Assembling the witnesses, Lady Eleanor Calthorpe entered first, her posture composed but her eyes shadowed by the recent turmoil. Julian followed, tense and restless, his anger tempered by relief but his youthful pride still raw. Victor Langley appeared with visible unease. He had never been a violent man, but his complicity in minor deceit had weighed heavily. Finally, Sophia Bellini, the culprit, arrived, escorted by Inspector Fournier. Her elegance remained, but the confidence she had worn like armor was diminished. Her eyes flickered nervously, darting from one face to another. Poirot greeted them with his usual courteous smile. "Mes amis," he said, "we are here to conclude a story that has troubled this hotel, its guests, and the mind of everyone involved. We shall now examine not merely what was done, but why and how. Step 1. The method. Poirot moved toward the balcony, where the scene of the crime remained largely undisturbed. "Observe," he said, "the balcony itself. From this space, Sir Raymond Calthorpe's final moments were orchestrated. The murderer required opportunity, skill, and precise timing. Observe the door locked from the inside, but manipulated after the act. Observe the body, arranged to suggest collapse rather than murder. Observe the timing of the scream, delayed deliberately to create confusion. Every element of this crime was considered, designed to mislead. And yet every element left a trace." He pointed to the tiles, the railing, the faint impressions of the vase, the envelope placed carefully on the balcony table. Even the smallest detail can reveal the truth when observed with patience. Step 2. The motive. Poirot's gaze swept across the room, resting briefly on each person. "Now consider the motive. Murder is rarely random. Sir Raymond's power, influence, and willingness to manipulate those around him created fear. Fear is a compelling motivator. The murderer acted to prevent exposure, to protect their reputation, and to avert ruin." He paused, letting the weight of the observation settle over the room. Fear is a universal language, and in this case, it guided the hands of the guilty party with deadly precision. Step 3. The psychological trap. Poirot turned specifically to Sophia Bellini. "Mademoiselle, your actions were deliberate. You understood the timing, the stage, the perception of witnesses. You manipulated the environment to create an illusion. Yet, in doing so, you revealed yourself through fear, hesitation, and reaction. Human nature, as I have observed for many years, cannot resist the pressure of careful observation. The guilty mind reveals itself without words. And the little gray cells our minds observe all." Sophia lowered her gaze, a subtle quiver betraying the emotions she sought to conceal. Step 4. Confrontation and admission. Poirot continued in measured tones. "You acted to prevent the disclosure of something you feared would destroy you. You chose the balcony because it allowed both control and concealment. You staged the scene to suggest suicide, manipulated the timing, and relied on the assumptions of others. Yet even a carefully crafted plan cannot withstand methodical observation." Sophia finally spoke, her voice low but steady. "Yes, it is true. I acted out of fear. I did not wish for him to expose what I had done. I misjudged everything." Poirot nodded, gently but firmly. "Indeed, mademoiselle. And now, justice, which may be patient, but is inevitable, will follow." Inspector Fournier stepped forward to take formal custody, but the atmosphere was quiet, reflective rather than accusatory. The gravity of actions taken in fear, and their consequences, hung over everyone present. Step 5. The consequences. Poirot addressed the remaining guests. "Observe, mes amis, that justice does not merely punish. Justice illuminates the truth, clarifies responsibility, and allows the innocent to find peace. Fear is a powerful force, but it is not invincible. Human observation, reason, and the application of the little gray cells ensure that actions have consequences, and that the truth, though delayed, emerges." Lady Eleanor took Julian's hand. Victor Langley exhaled, relieved that his own minor complicity had not escalated further. The staff moved silently, their presence a reminder of the wider social context in which such crimes occur. Poirot reflected silently. Greed, ambition, and fear had collided on this balcony. Only reason, patience, and observation could disentangle them. Step 6. Reflection on human nature later. Alone in his suite, Poirot gazed at the sea, its surface glittering under the moonlight. He reflected on the human condition. "Crime is rarely what it appears," he murmured. "It is a combination of opportunity, motive, and human weakness. The guilty believe themselves clever, yet even perfection is betrayed by the inevitability of nature, psychology, and observation. Fear, when unchecked, leads to irrational acts. Yet observation, patience, and the careful use of the little gray cells reveal the hidden path, the secret decisions, and the final act." He allowed himself a rare smile. Justice, mes amis, is not merely the law. It is understanding, clarity, and the ultimate triumph of reason over chaos. The balcony. Silent at last, Poirot returned to the balcony. Looking down at the tiles where the traces of the crime remained faintly visible. The railing, the position of the objects, the subtle scuff marks, they were silent witnesses. "The theater is concluded," he said softly. "All actors have revealed their parts. All secrets are now known. The balcony will remain a place of beauty, yet a place that reminds us that even in elegance, human weakness and fear can collide with deadly consequences." And as the waves below lapped gently against the rocks, Poirot felt the satisfaction of reason restored. The murderer had been revealed, justice would be carried out. And the truth, patient as always, had prevailed. End of Part 10. Justice on the Balcony, the mystery of Sir Raymond Calthorpe's death. The false clues, the fear, and the intricate manipulations, all had reached their conclusion. Through observation, patience, and the careful application of the little gray cells, Hercule Poirot had once again illuminated the darkness that others sought to conceal. The balcony, now quiet, stood as both witness and monument to the inevitability of justice.